Food is fuel for your body, your mind, and definitely your sport. But let's face it, nutrition is confusing, and the expectations on girls and women to be thin and have a six-pack are exhausting. If you've ever been frustrated with your body, confused about nutrition, obsessed with eating healthy, or guilty when you don't, underate, overate, or overtrained, and overwhelmed with all the pressure, then this podcast is for you. Nutrition can be easy. You can take control of it, but it might start with letting go of control by asking for help and making a change. I'm Lindsay Elizabeth Cortez, sports dietitian and owner of Rise Up Nutrition, where I empower female athletes to overcome nutrition concerns and perform at their highest level, to stop being confused by all the mixed or harmful messages, and finally have confidence in your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. Welcome back, fans. We have another great episode of the Female Athlete Nutrition Podcast. I'm here with Melis Edwards. Mel has been a running and triathlon coach, personal trainer, fitness instructor, and athlete for over 30 years. She's an 8-time Ironman finisher as well as ultra runner, including Western States 100. And she's coached many athletes in these events and distances over the years as well. Since leaving her full-time career in the fitness world, she now works as the director for graduate school admissions for Montana State University while still staying active in the athletic and fitness world by recently receiving a master's degree in health promotion, currently pursuing a doctorate, and she published a book called Deep End of Pool Workouts about deep water fitness training. So we have a lot to learn and talk about with Mel. So thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. I know you have so much to share about training, coaching, and nutrition, but I first thought we could start with you telling us a bit about your journey with sports, obviously being a triathlete and an ultra runner. You know, what first got you into that community?
I'd say that it was I sort of tripped into it, I'd say. It was I want to say it was something like the summer of 1982, way long ago. I was still in high school, and there was a PBS special on Western States and 100 miler. I don't remember what the special was. I've never gone back to look at the special. I was watching it with my dad, and I said, I'm going to do that one day. And my dad's like, really? Okay, I'll be there with you. And so that's kind of when the seed planted. And it wasn't until almost, I'd say it was about a decade later, that I met a friend who ended up being a great mentor and a coach on ultra running. I went to her. She was a chiropractor in the Bay Area, and I had a rib out, and she was an ultra runner and still is an ultra runner. And she's like, hey, we were talking the whole time. She goes, why don't you pace me? And I thought, oh, and that's where the world started, literally for me. I said yes, and the rest was kind of like history, which it's a big history, but it was a time when I don't think without having some sort of mentor, someone kind of showing me the ropes, it would have been possible. There was no books on it. There was the web didn't exist. There was nothing. It was a time when you decided to do an ultra run. You literally had subscribed to Ultra Running magazine, black and white, and you would read about a race and go, I think I'll try that. You had no idea what you were getting into. So that was the time.
Wow. Amazing. And were you a runner of any level prior to saying yes to the ultras?
Well, I ran for high school and sort of for college. I'd say yes for college. I ran for De Anza Community College, and there's quite a few people out there that still kind of remember me. And I was kind of a screw up. Like I wasn't coached in high school. So when I finally did get to that environment my senior year, I was one of those people that you would call uncoachable because I didn't have the coaching. I'd talk back to the coaches. I did all the things that were wrong. And so it was kind of humorous when I would run into those coaches afterwards, and they would look at me and look like if I was wearing a shirt, like for some, the Eagle in Canada. And they're like, there's no way you did that. There's just no way. And so I wasn't really a great runner. And I remember trying my first marathon was in college in the early 80s or mid 80s ish. And it was a mess. I was broken. I had Achilles tendonitis. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah, it was everything you could do wrong. That's how I learned.
Yeah. It's so great. Such a different time, right? I think a different time for just sports. Like you said, now if you're interested in running, you can YouTube, you can listen to a podcast. There's hundreds of books about it, but like there really wasn't back then. Like, quote unquote jogging became like a phenomenon back in the 70s and 80s, like it just wasn't a thing. And even the Western states 100, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never run it myself, but that just started in like the 70s and became popular in the 80s, right? So that even that in and of itself was kind of a new thing.
Yep. Same with Ironman. Both of them started around the same time, around that early Western states was, I think, 79 or 78. Same with Ironman. So it was this, usually it was kind of a little bit of just sort of a wacky thing that people did. I mean, no one knew what it was. Now you could say Iron, everyone knows what it is. You could say Ultra, everyone knows what it is. Flashback, no one knew. They're like, what is that? Like, no concept at all. And then it would be followed with, why would you want to do that?
Yeah. And so it totally makes sense too, that like you said, you're like, I was doing all the things wrong because maybe there wasn't a quote unquote right way even established, back then.
Right. It was, I just followed along when I finally got into training with my mentor. I did everything she did. And even at that time, I still had problems. I mean, it was like in the early 90s, and I'm thinking, I'm doing everything she's doing. However, as a nutritionist, every person's body is different. They all run differently. I'm 5'8", about 145 pounds. My coach was dripping wet, maybe $110. So just imagine me trying to do everything this $110 person is doing. And for your listeners, my body needs more of everything, and it responds differently. So my first year of ultra running, I spent more time, literally, I'm just going to say it, just vomiting. I would be in a race and I'd be like hurling, eating everything. I mean, my first 50K, I think I spent, and that was a time when the 50Ks were never really measured correctly. So it was a 50K that was actually more like 37 miles.
Have you run extra? You've already come this far, just run a little more.
They were all like that. It was kind of around that, there's no GPS at the time. And I mean, 10 miles of just run, vomit, try to eat something, run, vomit, try to eat something.
Oh my gosh, miserable.
That was my journey, my first few years of training for ultras.
Yeah, so absolutely no concept of how to fuel for performance at all, and just following with what other people were doing, but recognizing, wait, this isn't working for my body, but not knowing what the heck else to do.
Right. So that was when I started really experimenting on my own, going, okay, clearly I'm doing everything, but I'm not. My body is not. I mean, the cramping and all the kind of things that were happening. And that's when I started kind of investigating what would work for me and mixing my own. And there was also a time where there wasn't a lot of stuff. I mean, bars were just out. I think I wrote to you and said Power Bar came out in, I want to say it was like 88 or 89. They were hard. And if it was cold, you just like took your teeth out trying to chew on them. You stuck them on the top of your bike. You just push them on your top bar.
Yep.
And they would
you just made them stick to them.
They'd stick, and then you would just peel them off, because those are the only thing that, one of my mentors, all she ate were bananas. She ate like 23 bananas. Dr. Sharon Svensson, she was doing Ironman, so she helped get me into that. 23 in an Ironman.
Wow. And it worked for her.
Yeah. She has never eaten a banana since. Like she a banana, and this is 35 years, like after she left that thing. So it's such a different time to try to figure out food.
Totally. Your power bar example is cracking me up because I'm sure people listening are thinking how nasty like power bars or like making it stick to your bike. But I'm remembering, to me, that's very nostalgic because I was a child at that time. And my dad, he was actually also on the podcast, episode 15, when I was a kid and my dad was training and he did a lot of cycling and he would eat power bars. And I used to look forward to getting on the bike with him so that I could eat a power bar because I loved them. I love those old school traditional power bars, like that cookies and cream one. Oh, peanut butter one. I love them.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, gosh, I can't even say when the last time I ate so many of them for so many years that it's just like, I have a hard time. If I go back to training, then I investigate. But we have so many options now. It's so amazing. So many more natural products or gluten-free or whatever it is. Like I love exploring them all now. So when someone, I'm like, I don't know, just start trying. Just see which ones respond to your body, which ones sit, which ones make you kind of feel a little pukey. Don't eat those. Like
yeah. So as you were an athlete and doing things like, ultra running and Ironmans while sports nutrition and also training for these events was really a learning process, really just starting. Like, is there anything that you learned for yourself along the way? Like you said in the beginning, you were doing an ultra and just vomiting all the time because nothing was settling in your stomach. So is there anything that you eventually grasped onto that really worked for your body?
Yeah, I think in the funny thing is it's something that I still tell people today. If I take, I'm not doing this full time anymore, but every once in a while I'll grab somebody and if they're interested in last couple of years, I coached a couple guys into doing ultras, doing 50K, and one went on to do a 50 miler and he's going to hold off on the 100 miler. But some of the practices then I could still use today. And it really comes down to, for some, it's trial and error. Try something, see how your body responds. And the only way to really see it, like you could test it out, having it as a snack in the middle of the day, which is great to know. All right, how does that respond? But then you have to test it out when you're training to see how it responds, because there is no right answer for everyone. And that's what I have felt. I mean, I could guide, and when I have teams, I could guide with a general guidance on what kind of electrolytes or fluid recovery they would need, but they would have to, and this is where a friend of mine says, you're such a holistic coach. And this is before the term holistic would be out there. You're so holistic. And it was because I would say, listen to your body. Like, what is your body telling you? What is it? What are the signals? Are you getting really salty afterwards? If you see all the salt crust over your body, okay, we might be having too much or too little. Let's listen and look at these signs so you know. And of course, when you're doing really long endurance races, sometimes that crust and that kind of thing happens anyways, just because you're out there for 12 hours and 14 hours or 30 hours for ultra running. But I think that was the biggest message, was what responds. And for me, I just realized one day I went, you know what? I'm just not going to eat this pared down stuff that my mentor is telling me. She would water down a lot of her electrolytes, but she had been doing this for 15 years before me. That's the one thing that I also learned, is that the longer you do these sports, the more your body adapts and changes and it accepts. So I just upped all the calories in everything. I just quadrupled everything than what she was doing. And oh my gosh, it was fabulous.
Amazing
how that works.
I want to highlight this because you just said something really key. So a couple things. One is, when you are first starting out, it might surprise you how much nutrition you need, because somebody who is more trained has adapted. So it's like they're more trained. Maybe they're doing longer runs. Maybe they're doing more intense. Maybe they're training more often, but their body's more adapted if they've got 10 years of training on you versus you just starting out. You might be doing a lower level of training, but need even more fuel to get you through it and help you adapt to that training. So that's huge right there, because this is a misconception people have. Like, I'm not a professional athlete. I must not need that much fuel. Well, actually, maybe you need more because you're not a professional athlete, because your body's not.
Exactly.
So that's huge. Another thing I want to highlight is, you mentioned earlier that your mentor was a smaller frame than you. And so lots of people think, well, if I'm, larger, for lack of a better term, if I'm larger, then maybe I should eat less to have some sort of body size that's smaller, like my mentor. And no, it was the opposite. No, this is what I need for my body. I need more. Right. So that's another key point that you just said. I really wanted to highlight those.
Oh, good. Yeah. And again, that was kind of, I had nutrition. My bachelor's degree was in health education and stuff, but it had been years before. So some of this information kind of came from then, but this was all kind of like treading in all new waters and understanding how your body responds, not just for an hour. You're going for training. I would run, typically it was anywhere from 80 to 100 miles in a week. And that was on the low side for most ultra runners. Most ultra runners ran more. That was something else I had to learn. I couldn't run more. My body breaks down. Every time I would try to go up in mileage, it didn't matter how well trained I would start pulling things, straining things. My body said, no. So I had to adapt and really go, how is my body doing for this sport? Which is something I think even today, people have a hard time understanding that. Try to follow whatever's out there, whatever's written to a T, and it doesn't work for them. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to be coached, but it's sort of taking a step back. And that's what I did. I wasn't being coached. My coach just kept thinking I was kind of crazy eating all the stuff. And she was just like, okay, eat whatever seems to work for you, or train how you think. And that was at that point is where I kind of broke away and I started doing more hydro running and doing some different things that I thought my body needed. But there was nobody doing that at the time that I knew about.
Yeah. And I want to shift into that now because as you mentioned, maybe as an ultra runner, you were running 80 to 100 miles a week, but some might say for ultra runners, that's on the lower side or something, but your body breaks down if you run more, but there's still ways that you can train and reach your fitness goals without necessarily running more. And you have an entire book about, you call it the HIIT method, which is not what some people today might think high intensity training. This is hydro interval training, correct?
Right. It's hydro interval training, and it is just as high intense as land-based. And this is the problem that most people who, if they visualize water, they immediately think nothing against anybody my age or older. Because remember, I'm in my 50s. Nothing against older individuals who are doing more aqua aerobics, maybe a little less intense. But now, over the last decade or more, there's been a huge shift when it comes to water. Super intense type of workouts you could do in shallow as well as deep water. So I think the issue is people don't realize that you can cross-train in the water. They see it as that's separate. That's water people, and that's this. So when I wrote my book and pitched it, even when I was pitching the book, they're like, well, this is just goes into the water aerobics side of things. I'm really trying to speak to athletes, land-based athletes. I wrote the book for land-based athletes, not for water people. Water people already get it. Water people already bought into it. Who hasn't bought into it is land-based because they're like, wow, I like to get my endorphins when I run on land, or, I'm a runner. I'm not a water person. I'm like, and so am I.
Love that.
So I could sell it to some people like my friend who introduced me to you, because she's a runner. And when you can get in the water and cross-train in the water, you don't have the pounding. And instead, for deep water means your feet aren't touching the ground. Your head's above water. I've had people ask, is your head underwater? I'm like, no. You need to breathe. So your head's above water, but you're able to really extend your motions instead of stopping where the ground would be. So what happens when you train in the water, you actually work more of the muscles that you would need for running anyways. And most people's weakness for runners are the whole posterior chain.
Yep. It's been my weakness for the last 10 years.
There it is. You get in the water and put yourself in the correct position without the hips being hitched back, with actually extending just like you would if you were like running as hard as you can, your hamstrings will light up that fast. And so cross training, and Bridget always would say she loves it when she would train a lot in the water and then you get on land and land felt easy because you're in the water, you have water restriction, you have water pushing against your body, every movement. And the harder you push against the water, the harder it gets. So if you move really slowly, you could rehab. But if you move really hard, you have all that water resistance, but the resistance isn't just in one direction, it's multi-directional. So it's constantly working on all those little muscles, those little stabilizers. I'm just going to say that I had knee surgery 12 years ago due to a bike wreck, not from running. That's the challenges of training for Ironmans. You do occasionally crash on a bike. That happens. I was able to rehab with water with my right knee. And I got back pretty fast. I had surgery on my left knee, still stuff left over from a bike wreck. And it's taking me so much longer to rehab because I don't have a pool to rehab in.
Oh.
There's examples on that.
Yeah, so good. This is absolutely fascinating because I think as a runner, I think I had enough knowledge. I ran collegiate track and field. And when we were injured, we did water workouts. So I had the knowledge that water workouts would help you, A, rehab, and B, keep your fitness, even if you weren't on land. However, I think because of that, I've personally had like a negative association that like water workouts mean you're injured. Right. And so it's good that, that we can do that while we're injured. And in fact, one of my coworkers, another sports dietitian on my team, Jenna, she just shared with me that when she was in college, she fractured her tibia while she was in training for a marathon. So she hardly did any land-based marathon training, did the entirety of her marathon training in the water. And then first time back on land was the race. And she said it felt so easy. Running felt easy. So just like you said that, I think like you said, I have like this negative connotation because it means you're injured, which, in many cases it might mean that because it's a great replacement, but that it's not just this, this is what you can do while you're injured, but to even like flip your mindset and be like, this is going to almost push me further ahead while I'm injured.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, your story is similar to mine. That's how I got introduced to it and didn't want to, I wrote about it in my book. I'll have to send you a copy. I didn't want to even touch it again for 10 years. So I thought that was the most horrendous thing, but I also didn't know what I was doing. And I've seen that. I've gone to pools when teams were coaching and I see them working their athletes in the pool. And I'm not mentioning names. I'm not mentioning where I've seen these things, but people aren't doing it correctly. So that's also implanting a bad seed as well. Like I watch their form, I watch how they're doing it. And I know I have a very unique skill set when it comes to actually understanding how to do the movements correctly. And they are challenging to learn. It's not an easy thing to learn correctly, to do it correctly. But when you do, you hit it out of the park. About a year and a half ago, it was great that Bridget was able to come and kind of learn a little bit. I had an opportunity to work with an injured reserve football player before our pools closed down because of COVID. And I got to blow this guy's offensive lineman's mind out of the water because he was like, water. And we trained together for like 6 months. And he literally said some of the workouts I put him through, and some of them went up to about an hour and a half long, which is a significant amount of time doing intense workouts. He said they were harder than some of his NFL training.
Wow.
Yeah, and I use big bands and paddles and all sorts of different types of drills, working both shallow and deep ends. So you can make it as hard as you want it, and you can train for any sport. I just cater mostly to running, and I only thought about running, but that was a great opportunity to work with a short blast kind of athlete as offensive lineman.
Yeah, I love that. So helpful in multiple different sports, helpful during injury, and I think also helpful not even for injury. Do you think that it's smart to incorporate hydro interval training even if you're not injured? I'm thinking a lot for a lot of the clients I work with that we might be overcoming some internal health issues. Like as an example, I work with a lot of women who have hormone imbalances or amenorrhea due to low energy availability, disordered eating. And so we really do have to mitigate or reduce exercise intensity. And I hear what you're saying, that actually water training is still intense, but the difference is, as maybe a runner or somebody who's doing a lot of pounding on the pavement, maybe switching to some water training could be less inflammation. Am I right to assume that?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. I think 100%. I think in the years of me working with people in the water, everything from hockey players, because my past I've had experiences with quite a few different athletes. I think you can completely use water as part of your training. You can remove some of your training. So, I mean, I tested it on my last Ironman. I was going to say, I just decided I wasn't going to do as much running as I had before. Even the last few ultras, half my training is in the water. So I would just do like my long run each week would be on land, and the rest was all in the water. It's a complete, depending on what you're doing in the water, you can just supplement away, and it doesn't have to be intense the entire time. I've had people that have had lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, you name it. I've had so many different people that have come through the water and found that they just feel so much better. Like they could work at a pace that works for their body, so their body doesn't kind of push back. And so I would think with the population that you're working with, there'd be no reason why not to. Yeah, I have yet to meet anybody who doesn't respond well to water, except for somebody who's literally has skin issues. So if they have any kind of eczema, something where they might have a reaction to chlorine or bromine or something like that's really the only issues I've ever seen in the 30 years of doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. So you have a book, obviously, and I'm curious for people who are listening who are like, because I'm getting really interested now too. If they purchase your book, which I want to say the name of it again, Deep End of the Pool Workouts.
It's Deep End of the Pool Workouts. I honestly, I wanted to call it something different, but it's out of Ulysses Press, which was out of Berkeley, but they kind of picked the name and I was like, okay, fine. But yeah, you can get it on Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. It's been out for a couple years, and it's one of those books where I think some of the reviews people said it was hard to follow. Not that I want your listeners to go, what? She's saying it's hard to follow. It has a lot of photographs, but it's very text, and it explains each motion. Because my audience, I was really thinking of, if I want coaches to train somebody, they could follow this. And I know it follows clearly because my co-author is a physical therapist, and she didn't do water. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying when I'm saying that.
Yeah.
She didn't. So she needed to be able to read it and have it make sense to her. And she's been a physical therapist for 30 years. So super important that she was able to learn and could actually describe the motions and show me the motions. Like we would do WebExes, so I could make sure she actually got it and the context is correct. But I think that's just something I wanted to say, that I think it's a good book, and I've had a lot of people read it and write me back personally in emails going, this is amazing. I'm like teaching it to all my friends at my club and and I'm like, yes.
Well, and I would really appreciate all that descriptive understanding, because for coaches and serious athletes, like if you're going to pick up this book, it's because you want to reap the benefits of the water training, and you're going to want to make sure that you're doing it right. What I'm hearing from you, Mel, is like the positioning of your body is really important as you're doing these exercises. And again, because it has been years since I've been in the water, I've never been a water lover, but I'm reflecting back on my college days when I did do some water workouts when I was injured. And I probably wasn't doing the form right, which is nothing for my coaches. I had great coaches, but I guarantee you I wasn't doing the form right, in which case was I really rehabbing this injury, you know? So I think that for our listeners that are serious athletes or our coaches, we're going to really appreciate the details of how do we implement this training to make it work for our benefit.
The other thing that water does that, and I refer to it as hitching your hip. So if you were standing straight up and then you kind of stick your booty out and you pitch your booty back just a little bit, but your chest goes forward, that's just slightly. It doesn't have to be very much, but that is the standard position that somebody will be in when they're incorrect. So as soon as they're in that position, their hamstrings relax. They actually aren't engaging their core as much. And you think, what are the things that you need as a runner? As most athletes, you need a solid core. Like you need the muscles that entire chain strong. And that was the thing that the football player, I will not mention a name, but that was the one thing that he literally stopped doing his land-based core workouts when he was doing the water workouts. I mean, you think about it, this is a professional football player. What do they train? 8 hours a day?
Yeah, all day. Yeah.
He stopped doing his land-based core workout because his core was so fatigued from the motions we were doing in the water.
Wow.
It blew me away. This person was so strong. Yeah, it was a great experience.
Well, you know what? This is another key thing that you're bringing up about the core. And sorry for all my flashbacks. I'm just relating this to myself. But I was a gymnast when I was a young athlete. I was a gymnast. And so I did have, what I thought to be a strong core, but all my physical therapists and athletic trainers in college told me I had this weak core. And why? Because as a gymnast, you know how the gymnasts do those poses where, the arms go up and the back arches. So I was always in that position. And then I transferred over into running, and that's why my whole posterior chain got, screwed up and probably still is today. And then I always had people telling me, you need to strengthen your core. Well, it didn't matter how many hundreds of crunches I did. That was not going to be what strengthened my core, right? It's not about just doing crunches. It's about getting your body in the correct positioning. And it sounds like this can be much easier to learn and implement and train with your body in the right position when you are in water.
Yes, I think so. But I'm kind of jaded because I do believe in that. But it's really good that you're sharing that story, because that's what I find, that even though we have all this information out on the web and there's all this, we're inundated. That some of the same things that were going wrong 20 years ago with training or whatnot, they're the same today. They're really not any different. The couple athletes I worked with just a few years ago, they had the same things and they were reading everything. But if you don't sometimes have somebody point out those things to you, you're not even aware that you're doing them. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that sometimes these issues are out there, and just like you didn't even see it. And that was the other thing that because I've been looking at athletes in the water, I don't get in the water. So when I coach an athlete, I'm on the deck. I mean, I just show up and I look down. I can see down in the water, and I can see when somebody's core is not engaged. I can tell when they've sprained their ankle, and they don't even have to tell me. I can tell. I can see all their weaknesses. It's almost like, for all your readers and your listeners out there, when you thought back in college, when you're reading a journal article and you use your highlighter and you're like, oh, yes, remember that. When I put somebody in the water, it's like putting a highlighter on them. I could literally tell them what I thought was wrong. And 99% of the time, I'm correct.
And this is the value of a coach, right? This is the value of having a coach, someone like yourself, to be able to point out these things. And another interesting thing that you just mentioned is, that it doesn't matter how much information is out there. Over the years, we kind of see the same problems happening over and over and over again. And again, that's why you need that one-on-one, what's going to work for your body. And I kind of want to circle this back to nutrition just a little bit. That same thing. There's tons of nutrition information out there. It gets overwhelming, gets confusing, but there isn't a one size fits all. And throughout the years, we see some of the same nutrition problems happening over and over and over again. So again, the value of a coach and individualizing this and making it work for you. And you said that back in the day, you did some trial and error with nutrition. But even now and more recently, when you were coaching quite a bit, you still found that it was important to allow your athletes to do a little bit of trial and error on themselves and see what worked for them, right?
Absolutely. Because I found that over the years, people get disconnected from their bodies. And when the first watches and the heart rate monitors came on, I remember I would tell my athletes, they're like, I got a heart rate monitor. I'm going to start wearing it. I'm like, all right, well, I still want you to know what your heart rate is. Like, you need to tell me what it is. Well, that's what it's for. I'm like, yeah, but if this breaks down, you still need to be connected. Like, you need to understand. And it's really funny that I'll read journal articles now where people are saying kind of go back to being old school. And it's kind of funny, but the same with the nutrition is just understanding how your body responds. I think over the years, I just saw a lot of people do things where they're reading and they get too involved with, this is the nutrition. And I think the worst thing is when I'd see somebody say, this is the nutrition I should be doing, and I want to lose weight, which is one of the worst things you could do trying to be an athlete, is be an athlete and attacking it to lose weight. I backfire on every single person. I've had people who I knew were dieting, and I said, and they wanted me to coach them, and I said, well, I won't work with you if you're dieting. And they're like, oh no, I really want. I'm like, no, I can't. Like, you have to not diet and be an athlete, like, because you need to feed your body. And I've seen bodies swell up beyond belief because they weren't taking in enough food. The issues that people were having, it's just like my own experience, but I wasn't trying to diet. I honestly wasn't. I was just following what my coach was doing, but she was a much smaller person, didn't need as much fuel, and had been training for so long. So basically I was starving my body, and I had so many problems. I mean, it was insane. So I think that was the biggest thing that I would see for the last 25 years is the individuals trying to diet, and no good ever came of it.
And I love that as a coach, you put your foot down and we're saying, I'm not going to coach you if you're dieting. You need a fuel to perform, right? And then I will coach you, because if you're performing as an athlete, I'll treat you like an athlete. But if you're dieting, your priorities aren't in line and you're not going to have good performance. And so that's a waste of your coaching, quite frankly.
Yeah. It was. I was probably one of the few coaches would be like, no, I would fire clients.
I love it.
But, it's just like as a personal trainer, which I did for years as well. If I gave you a workout that you're doing when we're not training together and you did not do that workout, then why are we meeting once every 3 weeks or whatever it is? If you're not doing it, then we need to meet more frequently or find someone. I mean, felt like I was just taking money from people, and that was something that just wasn't my mojo. So
yeah, you wanted to actually coach people. Right. Oh, amazing. Well, this has been such an awesome conversation, Mel. I thought we could finish up with some rapid fire questions if you're down to have a little fun.
Okay.
They're just fun. Mel, if you could eat one food every day for the rest of your life and never get sick of it, what would that be?
One food for the rest of my life and never get sick of it. This seems very strange, maybe, but agarashi tofu.
Ah, good.
I love agarashi tofu.
Is it different than regular tofu?
Well, if you go into a restaurant, if you get it, it's lightly fried tofu in a broth with katsuobushi on top, which is like little fish shavings. And I love it. I live in Montana, and so we don't really have that here. So when I do a chance to go back to California, I'll always go into a couple restaurants that I know, and I'll literally just order that as a bowl, Normally people have it as a side. I'm like, no, I'll just have
the whole bowl
for me. Yeah.
I love it. I just learned something new. And as a tofu lover and I love Japanese food as well, or Asian influenced food. So that sounds delicious. I just learned something.
Oh yeah. I don't know, because I haven't had it now for like 5 years. So
yeah. Well, awesome. And then some, obviously we've talked a lot about running, ultra running, Ironmans. What is your favorite sport to participate in?
I really love ultra running. I'd say out of all the sports, it was ultra running. I love just being lost on a mountain for a while. I'm not literally lost. I've done that. I've been lost. But just to be out in nature and just struggling and working through it, whatever you're working through, and getting grubby and dirty. And it still is my very first love when it comes to a sport. Absolutely.
Amazing. And I always like to ask, what about as a spectator sport? Is it different? Is there a sport that you really enjoy watching as a spectator?
It's a long day, but I do love spectating Ironmans. I think if anybody is listening to this and they have a curiosity on the sport, spectate an Ironman. Go out and help at an aid station. Even do that for an ultra run. I always recommended that to anybody who was getting into ultra running, is to go and work an aid station. And not just at the earlier stations, like earlier in the day where everyone looks perfect and looks amazing. Go in the later part when you see them struggling and how much your words can encourage somebody to keep going. I can't even tell you how valuable that is as an athlete and a coach. But yeah, Ironman's just because it's a day and it's a journey that it's you against the course. There's some people out there that are winning, and of course they're making some money. Then there's the rest of us that are doing it just because you want to do something that only you can do, and it can never be taken away from you. It's your own little journey. And so, yes.
I love it. Yeah. As a runner myself, and not an Ironman, but just a lover of endurance sports, it speaks to me when you talk like that. Like, it makes my heart feel good too. But I definitely agree with you, being a spectator, working at an aid station, getting that experience as well, like, really brings it all together. And it also makes you, as an athlete competing, appreciate just everything that goes into it, not just the race, everything about it. So awesome. And then Mel, our final question, if there was a female athlete, it could be somebody famous, professional or not, or otherwise, if there's a female athlete that really inspires you that you want to give a shout out to, who would that be and why?
Oh, wow. God, that's a tricky one, because so many people that have come in and out of my world over the years. And I'd say Bridget, but I also want to say Katie Brennan, and just somebody I met recently as well, or a few years ago. I could literally laundry list a whole bunch of amazing women that I have met. And I think as a female athlete, an aging female athlete, it's okay for me to say that, I think it's so important to share women's stories and athleticism, because I know when I was growing up, I didn't have them. So I will do one shout out for Dr. Sharon Svensson, because she's the one who got me into water running. And without that, I don't think I would have continued, because I had so many tendonitis issues. And she is still amazing. She's still running at age 70 and did Boston Marathon a couple years ago. So I will do my shout out to Sharon Svensson.
I love that. So to the woman who kept you in the sport probably longer than had you not otherwise been introduced to water-based training, and also just to all female athletes and supporting each other throughout all life stages of being a female athlete. Amazing. Beautiful. Well, Mel, this was just so great to have you on the show. So I want to remind our listeners again, we will include links in the show notes of your book title, which is Deep End of the Pool Workouts, all about hydro interval training, and where you can purchase it. And Mel, is there anywhere else, if people were interested in getting in touch with you, do you have a website we could share with them? Where can they find you?
I do. I have a website, and it's called the HIT Method Fitness. I manipulated a little bit. I had to take down some of the stuff because it was set up more for coaching, and I would go and do workshops and teach people how to do it. But because of COVID, I had to kind of shut all that down. But it's a great source. I've got some other articles and different little pieces I've written on it and some videos and things like that. And so, but people can contact me through there through my email address on the HIT method.
Thank you so much. That'll be awesome. We'll include it in the show notes. And we hope that when COVID, is a little bit safer and people can get back in the pools, that can open up for you again.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much, Lindsay. This has been phenomenal. I hope it's helped some other people.
I really hope you enjoyed that episode, and thanks for listening. But before I let you go, I have free resources that you can have access to right away, right now, so that you can start fueling your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. First, I have your Red S recovery race. If you've ever wondered if you might be struggling with Red S, curious to learn more, or know you have Red S and are looking to recover fast, then you can head to www.riseupnutritionrun.com/RedS and download the Red S Recovery Race. See how you place and figure out the next steps to recovery. Plus, while there, I have a few other great resources for you, including 3 nutrition secrets that every elite athlete swears by, and access to our private Facebook community, Female Athlete Nutrition. So again, to gain access to all of this, head to riseupnutritionrun.com/RedS. That's /REDS. And you can gain access and get the help you need fast. Too many girls and women and female athletes struggle with nutrition, but you don't have to any longer. Become fierce, fit, and fueled. Links in the show notes, and I'll see you next time.